So for those of you not aware, there are several teams within Canonical that have what's called a community of practice group. And what it means is that people from across the company get together to discuss their processes and their tools, from management to kernel developers to whomever basically wants one or thinks that it's required. About, was it 2 years ago? No, it must be a year. About a year ago. Yeah, a little bit over a year. The QA teams decided that it'd be a good idea to form one for us. We have meetings on a regular basis on the phone, and then we started having in-person sprints about a year ago as well. So this is basically kind of a new meeting. We decided that it might be interesting to expose our group to the greater public, and so people have a little bit of window into what QA at Canonical is up to and some of the things that are on our plates for enhancing quality across our various teams. So we have just a kind of a brief agenda to talk about today, in no particular order. I figured I would just pick up with the one that I originally had on here, and that is QA conferences and trainings. So QA people across Canonical have come from various backgrounds. So a lot of us were developers who then started doing unit testing and then more testing and eventually transitioned over into QA. But there's only a handful of us that actually came up through the ranks of commercial and proprietary quality assurance. So on my team at least, OEM services, we decided that it'd probably be a good idea to check out some QA trainings or conferences to get the latest information on what the state of software QA is. So we started doing some investigations on what conferences were out there, what trainings were out there, and what we might want to send some representatives from Canonical to try to get some good information back to the rest of the team. So we had a discussion online over email. I collected a bunch of things. Actually, let me join this in person chat real quick. All right. So I picked up some links just by doing a little research, and one of the things that I realized is that if you go to a conference, they actually have a bunch of trainings at the conference, and rather than pay for trainings and then pay for a conference, it seemed like a good, reasonable idea to just go to a conference and report back. So there's a few of them that occur around. Post a few to the channel. There's this one. There's this one. This one. These are US-based conferences. The only reason they're US-based is because this originally started off as OEM, sending OEM people, and the bulk of the OEM QA team is based in Lexington. So, we had a discussion about what seemed like a good one, and Julian, you had mentioned this one.
Yeah, I just went to one of their conferences last week.
And someone also said that maybe it was you, that Star East was kind of too basic for what
Yeah, well, I don't know. Basic might be a good thing for some people. For me, personally, it wouldn't be. But yeah, a lot of the people who I talked to at the conference, they said the Star East the topics were like how to create a test case and things like this.
So not exactly advanced.
Yeah.
Rick here. Yeah, you had the same, was it the same conference too that you had some information on as well? That it was
Yeah, I was with Seagate Veritas. We sent a bunch of people, and it was like, okay, we already did this.
Okay. So, sounds like the Star series is out. So, tell us a little bit about the one that you went to, this
Well,
STP.
they talked about a lot about automation and infrastructure, how to separate the tests from code and make maintainable automation. Because in the past I found when I write automation tests, it's very fragile. The tests you build, you spend almost more time maintaining them and keeping them working than you do finding bugs. And so there's a lot of talk about writing tests that that were maintainable and easy to keep from breaking, like reducing fragility basically. So I found that very useful because I'm actually in the process of designing automation infrastructure for our team, and there's a ton of topics just about how to test in an agile environment, how to make your processes lean, and how to get more value out of your tests. One concept that I found very interesting was this fellow, he talked about getting creating as few test cases as possible with as much impact. So he actually had this matrix of something like 420,000 potential combinations that you could have. And he used an example with darts. And he's like, I've written 10 test cases here. Throw 2 darts, and I'll bet you they're covered by one of these 10 test cases. And he was right. Like I think he had like 5 different people do it, and I think one of them, they each threw the darts twice, and one of them, out of 10 throws, wasn't covered. So I thought that was pretty good. And basically, the concept was to leverage your test and test as much as you can with as few test cases as possible. And I thought that was great because that also reduces fragility and automation as well.
Anyone know anything about the other two?
I want to mention this one maybe for Javier. This is in Madrid in November.
Oh, okay.
And for what I've seen all the years, the people that they bring seems quite good.
So we may want to consider we may want to consider a European based one as well. All right.
And same thing, they have a couple of days of trainings and then 2 days of conference.
Isn't there a Google one that I think Ara did you go to that?
Yes, I went there once. That's
It's not every year though, right?
Sorry?
It's not every year though.
It is every year.
Is it good?
Sorry?
Was it good?
Yeah, it was really good. It was really, really technical for web applications. So
Doesn't really apply to you.
So for my job, it was really intense
Might
and
apply for
really
you.
good. And
Yeah.
it's free of charge. It's by invitation.
Oh, really?
And you're going to be in San Francisco soon, aren't you?
Yeah.
No, the thing is that they change the place
Oh, they
every
just-
year.
Okay.
Okay.
So, for example, right now it's in India, and,
Oh, wow.
and it's been right now. So it was the same week.
So it's happening right now.
It's happening right now.
Wow. Okay.
It's called GTAC, Google Testing Automation Conference.
How do you get invited?
So
Just sign
you
up.
apply and you explain what you do. Why it would be interesting to have you there.
Bjorn
Like-
Telenius, I think, went to that last year.
Who?
Bjorn Telenius
Telenius.
went to that last year. Bjorn T at Canonical. I think he's walking around there somewhere. He's on the landscape team now.
So yeah, normally they wouldn't allow more than 2 invitations per company. actually, if you are presenting, they also pay for your travel
Oh,
and
great.
your hotel.
Oh, cool.
Were you presenting?
No. And that's, I mean, the problem that I see with these conferences is that they have to be really good to, I mean, normally they are very expensive, and if you're not going to be like getting the most of it,
Yeah.
I mean, I found them extremely expensive. Like,
Well, that was the reason
And
why
I'm-
we're,
oh, because we have an open source background, and all open source conferences are for free. So, like, for free from
Yeah.
for free from $0 to $2,000. Like,
yeah,
is
well,
there anything in between?
no, there pretty much isn't.
And I think a lot of them wind up being sales pitches for very expensive.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
problem.
that's what we're trying to avoid.
Yeah.
So that was the same problem that I had with trainings, is trainings tend to be about $2,000 a person too, to attend like a 3 or 4 day training. And in the end, what you're getting is how to run, you know, load runner for Windows, and so it was very difficult to try to find trainings that were tool agnostic as well. A lot of them say they are, but then when you ask for their like curriculum, it's like, okay, so this day we're going to talk about test frameworks. It's like, oh well, what test frameworks are you covering? And just the it's like the standard set of Windows based.
WinRunner, QTP, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that will really help us, and there isn't really that many open source QA people out there enough for a company to actually put on a.
Crazy idea. How about organizing something like this during next UDS or in the spring? Say, oh, this we want to rally all the open source people. We're not going to sell you anything. Just come and talk to us.
Like a Linux QA and test automation conference.
It's a good idea. It's kind of what we're doing right now. Isn't it?
Let's create a new one.
Yeah, let's start talking right now. Let's charge money.
Well, I mean, that's what it's for. We can start talking about that. So that's a good idea. I want to put that on my to-do list.
The big vendors on Linux that have QA departments don't have this sort of thing already. It's kind of surprising.
No, it was.
Like Novell and Red Hat then?
Yeah, like, or even the VMware.
No, not really.
Not really, no. So they tend to develop their own tools, and then the people who run them are the ones that program, like Dogtail came out of, that kind of thing.
I exchange emails with a couple of people from Novell on the QA department, and they're really open to collaborate with the Linux environment, global distro agnostic. So, and they have a lot of budget, so we can.
What do we put? Copy doc just occurred to me. Is copy working even anymore? Just kind of a waste of time to put on with people.
I've seen people have more success with random Etherpad links than with copy.
Okay. I'll stick with my Tomboy note then.
It's the open source version of Camlin.
Yeah. Can you take a couple minutes? It's working here. Can you?
I'm in another meeting.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Multitasking. All right, so, excellent. That's all good. So if we decide to go with actually sending people to conferences, is there a core set of people? It's a little bit too expensive to be one per team. We would want to have a person from each kind of.
Well, definitely one person at least from OEM platform.
And I would think someone from, if not you guys, and someone person who has web testing background too.
Someone from the
absorb
CEO
that.
team for sure, yeah, there's Launchpad, Landscape, and IS.
So we can put an agenda item on for next meeting to flush out some of, either if we decide on this, one of these conferences, like the one in Nashville looks great, then figure out who to send, and then we need to go to our respective managers and try to get a budget to send people. But I think since the training thing went over pretty well with my manager, it shouldn't be difficult to say, rather than send the entire team to training, we're going to send a few people in the COP to the conference, and then
Yeah.
have them come back.
What I found very valuable about the conference was not necessarily the topics or whatever, but it was meeting people and having conversations with them about how they've handled situations in their environments and what their challenges are, and kind of brainstorming solutions together. It's really neat to get a different perspective. And you know, some people I met were using the exact same tools as me and running against the same problems. They had really great ideas for my situation. And yeah, you develop a relationship and you kind of get connected into a broader community. That's what I thought was really great.
Yeah, and I also thought it'd be good, the conference would also be good for that reason, and you get connections, and there may actually be other open source people floating around those things, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You know where it doesn't happen? When I went to the Google one, it's where nobody from
Really?
an open source background.
Maybe the correct thing is to start one up. If there isn't one.
Seems like there should be.
Exactly. There's enough tools at this point where.
And I think there's enough organizations who are probably having the same discussion and
Yeah.
lamenting the fact that there are no good.
Open source QA conferences, yeah. So,
Just create a mega one
yeah. No, we could definitely
and make it
definitely discuss that, that's for sure. Okay. So is there any other points on the conference thing? Anyone wants to bring up? No. So the other item got added just recently, and that is Paul was looking to discuss a little bit about Lenaro testing and how the COP might help
Okay.
development and what you guys are doing, and if there's tools we're already using that might benefit you. There's been a couple of discussions around this, but I figured it'd be nice to just
Well, and one thing
introduce
too
you
is
to the
I'd like to kind of raise awareness about the things that we're working on. So Zygmunt and I primarily both have been working on the Lenaro infrastructure team, which isn't specifically QA. Lenaro doesn't have a team specifically tasked with QA at this point in time. But some of the tools that we're working on are around the idea of providing some tools to make QA easier. Our primary mechanism for QA at this point is testing that would happen by landing teams, which are essentially enablement teams for specific ARM-based hardware platforms. And the idea being that they would be making things like kernel changes and wanting to test those changes, compare them against previous runs. And in addition to that, there's some other requirements that sometimes can be available or necessary, like needing to separate them, and in some cases keep them private. For instance, if they've got a board that isn't GA yet, to be able to track test results on it, but they can't necessarily share that with the wider audience. So in looking at that, what we did is we considered some things like Checkbox and things like that, but we wanted something to just be really simple and really quick, and not necessarily have a fancy user interface or anything, but allow somebody who's a developer who doesn't want to necessarily go out and think about what test suites do I want to run on this, and where do I get them from, how do I compile them, what options do I need to run. Make it very simple for them with one command to install it, one command to execute it, and one command to push the results to archive them for later. So the tool that's doing that is a thing called Abruk, A-B-R-U-K. kind of a dumb name from a Russian space monkey. So if this is my notebook won't really well, you demo it very easily right now. But if you want, maybe on a future COP meeting, I can do like a cloud-based demo or something of it. But it's pretty easy. It's kind of small at this point. There are lots of improvements, lots of room for improvement that I can see already. But if it's something that other people are interested in, it's not just for Lenaro, so it's something that I think others could make use of.
I think it's worth to point out that what the session is allows you to take some existing tests and run them on whatever you want, and wrap our infrastructure around it so you get things for free, and you can just focus on the test.
Right.
It's really easy to do so.
And it's Python based, and so the idea is, like Sigmund said, taking existing tests primarily, and you define in the test definition how it would install the test, if there's any dependencies it needs to grab, anything it needs to do to compile it, how to execute it, and then some regular expression stuff for how to parse the results into a meaningful fields that we can use to upload to the dashboard. So the piece that Sigmund's been primarily working on is a Django-based dashboard for storing test results. And right now we have some kind of simple views based on data browser, but we've had at least 2 sessions so far where we've kind of discussed views that we want to have to make that data available for comparing results and
For graphing,
visualizing, not only benchmarks but also qualitative tests as well, and highlighting new failures and things like that.
Yeah, it sounds like, I know we were in a session the other day, it sounds like a lot of that work is kind of what we're attempting to do in an overlay of Launchpad to try to provide
That's true.
test
Right.
results.
And we are talking
At
to
least
Mark
at the
about
level
this.
where things are get stored. The UI level is really custom for our needs right now.
Yeah.
Maybe it's, as we progress, it can be more generic, so more people can actually benefit from using
Right.
it. But yeah, I agree that the storage layer is something that we need to work on.
So, I mean, yeah, we're not completely doing this in isolation. We're interested in what other people are doing,
Yeah.
collaborating with. But sometimes given immediate needs, you kind of have to do something and then work on, okay, where can we tie this all in together?
And it's really important to point out that we could never use Launchpad before, for the simple reason that things need to stay private.
Yeah.
Well, and also the simple deployment
Yes,
for
it takes
if you want to have it
deploy
private
versus
instance.
how we do it in Launchpad.
Yeah. Yeah, I
The tool that
mean,
he's working on is very simple to deploy.
OEM is in the same situation where, I mean, we are using Launchpad for our bugs, but all of our projects are privatized, so you can't see into anything unless you're a member of our team.
Yeah.
Our initial development of checkbox cases and tools was all private. Some of those are eventually making their way out. So like we didn't have a good way to manage our test cases or develop them, so we created a tool called Checkbox Editor, which was completely internal to OEM services, and it understands Bazaar and can pull check-in and check-out cases and display them in plain text on your screen in a GTK interface. And we were using that for a few months and then realized that there was no reason why we couldn't push this out. So even though it was developed in isolation in a private product, eventually it made that. We got feedback from other teams.
And I non-canonical user checkbox.
Yeah, I was actually just talking recently about the concept of pushing our entire trunk out underneath our community QA team. So a couple of years ago, there was a need to pull in users of netbooks because we were doing a lot of netbook work in OEM, and we had long-term maintenance contracts with the OEMs, and they were saying, oh, you know, every time that you need to do an update on the system, we need to check on all the various netbooks and all the SKUs therein. And it was me and like another guy at that time in QA for OEM services, and there's no way for us to test a new build on like 50 netbooks. So I pulled in the community, and since then we've been pushing. That's kind of been the vehicle for our pushes out to the public in general.
Oh, another thing I wanted to mention is that Fabric is pretty modular. So the mechanism that we have for communicating with the dashboard is actually a module, self-contained Python. So you have subcommands. You Fabric the dashboard setup to configure it, Fabric dashboard push the results, and talk to Mark about possibly making a module to support the certification server. So if you wanted to use it to push results to that as well, you could do that.
Yeah, I'm very interested in actually seeing if Fabric could be used to pull data from the certification server, depending on the reports you guys develop.
As long as they expose an interface for us to do that, then yes. And in the dashboard, that kind of goes to mention this. We make it very easy to pull data out and put it in another. So for instance, if you had been running a private instance that you now want to archive your results on the public one because everything is now in the open, you can pull your results from that, and it exports it in the JSON format just like you pushed it, and then you can push it again to another server.
We essentially define a document format where you can actually wrap things in it and move it around by email, move it on a thumb drive, whatever. It's just a file, and everything's contained inside. You can clone your entire data from us into another that. It's easy.
And because of that, it's also very easy to, if you've got a machine that isn't connected, so maybe you've got a new thing that doesn't have networking at the time, and you want to, or you're behind a firewall and you want to get results out of it and push it, you can save those results out and then push it later.
You know, we have kind of a similar process with Checkbox now because we go on site, and often the manufacturers don't have internet or won't allow us to use it.
Yeah.
And all the results are just stored in this hidden directory in the home, and we just kind of send it off to a different machine, essentially. Cool. So the other thing that came to mind because of adding this topic was that I've been to a few sessions where people are talking about writing test cases for kernel and writing test cases for Conman and writing test cases for. I didn't know if anyone in the room here had something similar like what Paul is talking about, just his team's efforts to create testing resources within Canonical or outside that might benefit the group. I happened to bump into Paul in a session, so I added him to the list, but I didn't know if there was anyone else in the room that might, or online, who might have anything like that. Yeah, just comments on something. No.
When you asked him, you sounded like, does anyone have anything useful at all?
Well, I mean, if there's new developments in the QA work that you're doing, it'd be interesting for the group to know that, oh, we're developing a new test suite to execute cases against, nightly builds, or my team's developing a set of suites to automate testing for networking. Or
Yeah, I mean, I've been, for a while, using Wine as a test framework for performance and the video drivers in particular. Wine's really good at crashing them because it uses OpenGL in ways that no one else does. And so it's not just a crashing issue, sometimes it's just an actual driver bug. And so something I've been really keen on for a long time now is running Wine's test suite on Ubuntu as often as we can. And that means two things. And one, it means running stable Wine's test suite against latest Ubuntu, and also latest Wine's test suite against stable Ubuntu. So, like in the Maverick cycle, we had a couple of kernel changes and stuff that broke Wine in various ways, and we had to fix that and work around it. And so, but the main thing that Canonical can do for us, I suppose, is find the hardware bugs and yell at NVIDIA's friends to fix them.
You'd be surprised how difficult that is.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is their attitude, from what I've understood, is that they don't like to even acknowledge bugs unless there's an app that's broken by it. And when you can present wine test freezing the desktop or a wine test failure, then it's a wine test failure, then it's an obvious bug in some game somewhere down the line. Right? So.
Oh, that's good.
And so one of the other bits of this is automating the benchmark programs as well. So Windows has a whole lot of like 3D mark and run a game and spin around in a circle and record the FPS type of stuff. And so all that stuff can be automated and run through Wine and given like performance thing. What I would really like to see is sort of a daily number spit out by these benchmarks about how the system is doing. And if I had my way, it would be something that was paid attention to weekly, just the same way the boot speed charts were.
So there are some tools that do that now, of course. I was in a session yesterday actually that was interesting. The Unity team was putting together a blueprint for developing a performance test suite, just to test copies and how Unity performs underneath stress. And we started discussing organizing my tools in the same kind of way that GTK perf runs, where it opens a window in your existing desktop and then has all the elements required to collect the performance data that you're looking for. So I don't know how many of you have seen GTK perf. Essentially, it opens up a GTK window with radio buttons and drop-down menus, and it just proceeds to automatically execute all of the different features in that report, how quickly GTK can actually render them. So with that one, when the Unity one for copies gets developed, there's a few others that Phoronix comes to mind, and a couple of ones that.
So Phoronix reminds me there's I'm not sure about the complete current status of it, but there was a Windows port of Phoronix, which can actually run through Wine, and so you can compare the state of the two on the system. There's another toolkit out there, Glean for GL. It's a test suite for OpenGL. It's also cross-platform, and so it's something we should probably be running anyway. And I wouldn't mind seeing that automated in Checkbox, but it would also be easy to affix Wine in front of it and then compare, how much slowdown there is from Wine.
GLEAN.
GLEAN. I might have a link.
I know this sounds like a sales thing, but we should really have something that can store data from all these, like, we have Wine testing and so that, we have Phoronix, we have Phoronix Wine, we have this new thing, and like tons of different things, and you really want to look at the data in some ways, and you don't want to like hack it in scripts to,
Right, I think
picture out of each one.
I think we should have like benchmarks.ubuntu.com and that publishes these well-defined things. Like it was when Scott came out and did netbook a while back, he said like we're going to run boot time on this netbook every day and chart it, and just well-defined. Here's the machine. It's going to run Glean every day and spit out numbers here. And whether or not that web page looked pretty or not wouldn't matter for our purposes, right? And we would just need a glorified spreadsheet really to look at where this is going.
This is the perfect opportunity to drag Marjo and keep me streaming into the discussion.
I'm also the performance guy, so.
Yeah, he's got performance on the back of his shirt.
Performance on the back of his shirt. So,
So how can I help?
so there's a request for the concept of recording system performance, both application performance, graphical performance, along with boot speed and things like that that we're already doing on a regular basis and posting results for Ubuntu
Where did this, who brought up this request so I can follow up with them?
Scott.
Oh, of course. Yes. So Scott and I have had other discussions along these same lines, but what I suggested to him last was to basically get his test suites ready to be integrated into Checkbox, and then the next step, of course, would be figuring out if we were to run these new benchmarks or new tests, figure out how to go ahead and dump them into a central place. But that's where we usually get stuck in these things. Is our current focus is on boot metrics, and those are generated on a daily basis. They're reported. The raw data is there. You can go and hack at the data all you want, but there are already nice charts that you can look at. So we can take the same approach with these other suggestions, and we can certainly do that.
I'm wondering, so inside Checkbox, there's the concept of the type of test you're running. So just off the top of my head, there's like manual and shell and a few other ones. And depending on the type you choose, Checkbox does something different with how it executes them. So if you set it to shell, then it'll attempt to execute whatever code you have in the execute field automatically and post the results and grab whatever gets spit out in standard out. I'm wondering if we might consider putting a performance option there. So if you were to set a test case to performance, plug in, just as an example, GTK perf as what you want to execute. The Checkbox would pull the results back out of standard out, but do something special with them, like say conglomerate them into a preset chart, create spit out an Excel spreadsheet. And it might be really easy to then take that. I mean, it seems like it's not terribly difficult.
Since we already have this benchmark already, and we actually, whenever we run it, we parse the output, we store the data, we can like see the measurements of this thing across time. Like you can't see it, but we have the data. If you want, you can make a picture. So maybe
We can make a view in Django.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Then we also store the hardware information and things like software information.
So something I'm really interested in.
Yeah. So the request. Yeah.
I give you tests, you give me data on the web somewhere, and someone else maybe gives us a picture.
So from an implementation point of view, the choice will be to either integrate it into Checkbox, as you and I were discussing, and or figure out how to dump the data in such a way that the launch control and dashboard, validation dashboard could maybe look at the data in
We don't
some.
have like you don't need to do anything extra to
Okay.
have the data. You can just run data today and have the data in a meaningful format.
Perfect.
So the only difference, the only thing I see we should try to do is somehow be able to use both Checkbox and ABREC together.
That's kind of what I'm
Because
suggesting.
ABREC is fully automatic. You don't, by design,
Right.
you now need automatic tests so for validation. So if we could run ABREC tests and for the time being, you can store them in the database. We would just like move forward without doing much.
Right.
I mentioned the plugin for ABREC earlier, but we're also looking at writing a plugin for Checkbox
Yeah, so
that will allow us to upload to the dashboard. So they can both cross both those paths.
Okay.
So, right. So the things I've heard are maybe a new specification for type of checkbox test. Get some of the new tests, whether they're performance or whatever else, and then figure out how to do the integration with launch control. And it looks like some of the pieces that we need are already there. And now the question will be, hey, Jiva, where would we dump the data? Do you care where we
So
dump the data?
currently, ABREC can dump the data to the file system.
Okay.
And
So
you
flat
can
file
just
system.
dump the data as the raw thing that came out of the test. And you can also dump it with, because it's not that we can just run the test, we can analyze the test, and we do it per test differently. So
Right.
you can also dump the analysis. I think this saving at least, if someone tries to do the same analysis we do, I'm going to shoot someone. Come on, we have to do it like this stuff.
Perfect.
So
we have both, like we can have the log file and the sources today.
So how the code for determining what checkbox does for test types, how rigid is that? Is it possible to just create a new type called performance?
What you have is not a test or a job type, you have a plugin. So this means that every job is handled by a plugin, and the plugin is just a Python file in which you define which events are you listening to. So it's really flexible in that way.
So it'd be pretty easy to write a plugin for performance and then integrate everything to either use it or use it to submit results to launch control.
Yeah, I think it's something that you probably consider just to have another checkbox test that essentially runs a set of A-B tests.
Yeah.
And stop like trying to plug each one
Yes,
separately. And
yes, that's even better.
The real problem is not running performance test cases, but what do we do with the results?
Right.
That's another.
That's my biggest question.
Because we don't have a shared test case, no specific test case, and that test case may print in the output the number we are looking for. So we don't really need that plugin for performance test cases. What we need is a tool to process all the data that we have and maybe throw it in a time series or check the limits.
That's the
Sounds
session that you
sounds like
guys
we have
had.
that.
Yeah,
So
it sounds
what-
like we need to have another session.
Yes, I think. Yes. So
Uh,
essentially, there's a concern here because we have we don't have infinite time during this cycle, and we're gonna just do this many views. What I would love to see is other people working on the same code base, in a completely different branch, in different priorities, stuff like that. But essentially working on the same base, that it is an engine to store and retrieve data in a meaningful way, and then build things. Each team has a specific view that they want to. Like a boot chart is a view, but we could say we could do something like a boot chart for Unity, something like I know.
We don't want it to be tied to the test. We want it to be able to select the data that you want and look at it in some meaningful way that's fairly generic across a lot of people's needs.
My final question is that, okay, we've created the test, we've created the analysis framework, then we still need to define the hardware profile and get the actual
already
capture.
that.
Okay.
Yeah, we have that.
All right. So
The only thing is we may want to have a little bit more than we have today, but it's that you don't need to change anything on the database side. You just need to like get a new probe for the hardware. Like I'm really interested in the manufacturer of the wireless chips.
But isn't that already one of your data elements?
We can store it, but we don't hard it like on ARM. We don't have
You get LSD.
Oh, right.
harvesting things like on
Yes.
the PC would show up. But you don't have to change the database side to make harvesting any extra hardware information possible.
This checkbox
Where are you
will
storing
grab a
data
lot
right
of
now?
data.
So,
Where are you storing data?
so each test is a file, it's a text file. We analyze the text file and we build a document with 3 different sections. Essentially, one section is the results and measurements for benchmarks. Other thing is software information. Anything you may want to put there. Current, no, I'm just being too generous. You can put packages and versions and image descriptions.
But when
And you can store hardware information.
when you want to grab the results from a previous execution of the same test case, where do you have that data?
Oh, I'm sorry. Just say it, please.
So you have a performance test case,
Okay.
and this test case is being executed several times.
Right.
It's the same
So
thing Michael
okay,
was
have
asking
all
for.
the results
Okay.
stored in some place.
Okay, so what we do, we decompose the data. So you know that this number is actually, I don't know, the number of rectangles that GTK per calendar. And you have, like, it's a test case, it has an ID. So we can, for example, ask for all the values of, like, all the measurements for this test case across time and group by hardware in some meaningful way. And you get an array to print or to render. Or something.
Yeah, right. It's in a local database or is stored?
So the launch control, if you install launch control, we have data. You can connect it, you can plug it to any kind of database. And essentially the data is in the database. So our model for this cycle of these is to develop apps that sit along the data, that sit along launch control itself. And just if you want to render a chart, use the models you have directly from Python, from Django, and access the data. that we don't have a very rich API to do fancy queries. We just do that from Python and Django because it's way easier, and we don't have there's no need to have a central repository if you can just have a local repository with all the data at the same time. I don't know if I answered your question, but I'm just trying to discuss.
No, what I was trying to find out is if this tool can be used together with the test results tracker, because what we really lack here is where to store the results
Yeah.
and
Results
how
tracker,
to
and this is
visualize them.
essentially the same.
So if we have the test results tracker and a tool to visualize
Well,
the results,
so-
then we have the performance test results problem solved, right?
Well,
I
so,
get it.
right, so let's come back to reality. The reality is APREC, although it has capabilities for attaching to any kind of database, currently looks at a local file system for its storage.
No, it's
No?
like ABREC is just
It's just a testing framework.
yeah, it's a framework for
Right,
running.
but it has to look at the database
and make
somewhere.
a document,
No?
and it can
Okay.
upload the
Sorry.
document to the dashboard.
Okay.
And the dashboard can talk to any database you can connect to.
Okay.
So it can be remote
So the
database,
dashboard
local
can look at
database.
it, right. Results tracker, on the other hand, is required to have a integration with Launchpad, and Launchpad is deemed to be the database for the test results tracker. Now, the challenge for us is, are there enough commonalities between ABREC and the test results tracker, neither one of which is completed, so that we don't duplicate efforts. And I know Giga and Mark are already working together, but right now they are approaching the database problem from different
Trying
points
to
of view.
actually make it possible
So we're
to
not quite
express the
there.
same things, even if we try to express them like he has a different scheme. I know it's okay, as long as we can take and don't lose any data from one system to another. So if we agree on that, then I have very good. I think it's likely that at one point in time we can merge it somehow.
Yeah.
Although we have different requirements, like we can't use Launchpad. This is not an option for us, so we're never going to be in Launchpad. But if the data is the same, then it's not really important if it's stored in Launchpad today or in Launchpad today, and we can move it around.
The important thing is that the data representing the test results be in a format that we can all agree to, and then each individual test organization can then go and pull the data easily, as I've seen in ABREC, and then do your own analysis as it were, okay? Whether it's performance data or regression testing, I think that's the goal. We're not quite there yet, but we're beginning to build the pieces to be able to do that. I hope I'm summarizing the current state as I've heard it in the last few days. So,
well, essentially, we have two slightly different models, me and Mark, and both models seem capable, just that they're not identical, and they're not in agreement.
Storing the same type of data.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference is that Mark doesn't want to store the context of our software and hardware in the same database, and I do. So this is, I think, the last difference we have to figure out.
And the nice thing about Launchpad, of course, is we can do both of those types of data in one place. It so happens to all live in one place, which is good. We know how to get there and all that. You don't have that requirement, or you don't want to
use Launchpad.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, that's the way I understand the current state of things. But we're getting to where you just described, which is a so-called one tool that basically can take any type of test, run test results, and then the reporting can all be done in sort of one place. And right now, we're just all over the place.
One ring to rule them all.
So 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Should I just make a note to add this as a topic for the COP in
Yes,
November?
please. Yes, please. I'm gonna sign it to Carlos.
Oh, hell no. I mean, yes, no. Once Marty gets all
Okay. So it's basically all the time we have, but this is exactly why we have this group, is to do this type of collaboration. So,
I assume you all talked about Unity and desktop testing.
I did do a brief little
Great.
chat on the,
Thank you.
that's kind of what started it, or what we were talking about was the copies, performance stuff that they're doing in Unity and
Great.
what we need to, and tests that need to get written.
Functional tests, graphical testing, all that test automation.
Yeah, and that's one of those things like the boot performance that we need to be tracking on a regular basis because it's going to be extremely important.
So-
And I sent you the boot metrics locations.
There's already a collaborative effort between OEM, who have some manual Unity tests, and platform to write and flush out those tests for Unity. So I don't know if you guys ever do any desktop, or there's consideration of Unity.
Well, as soon as Unity becomes a test head for us, then we'll just take all that.
Okay, good. All right. Thank you everyone for coming.
There's one more comment.
Yeah.
On this common interface, database, whatever, it might be interesting to start either finding one or creating a taxonomy of all the possible test units or units to test, and trying to create a basic common subset. I've been talking with Mark also, and we've been discussing how this will be done, and the idea is to create something that will allow any query to be made, and you can specify what some subsets of it, so you don't get data you don't expect, you don't get data that crashes.
I think the issue here is that Mark tries to make this a remote thing, whereas if it's local, you can do queries for any kind of like it's not a problem if the data is local. You can do a query now, right? What's stopping you? And Mark's trying to build this. It's like the server is over there and it's another tower. You have to talk with it.
Yeah,
and this is I think the problem that we want to solve.
This came from last UDS when we were discussing where this database stored will be. And at this point in time, we were considering to have a remote, some server, storing it so that with multiple access. And Mark Helleborg came in and said, hell no.
Hello?
Hell no. It's
Okay, that's
launch
good.
pad or it's not.
Oh.
That's good. So we started to think about that.
So since this was the first kind of public exposure of the COP and its workings, I was just wondering if there would be interest for a public forum for the community to say, this is not a QA considering this idea. Is it more than a UDS every 6 months?
I mean, R is accessible.
Okay. I mean, a lot of us are playing around with Reno and stuff, so I just thought it was apparent that we were open to suggestions.
Right. I mean, like, I know how it's pretty obvious how to like complain to you guys.
Okay.
I don't know what like ongoing conversation